for $6,500, which I think is a fair price.
Pretty nice.
Let's look at the floor pans here. They're very solid. There's a little water there. Very solid. There's no rust through anywhere in the car. You can look underneath. It's kind of hard to see, but when you look at it, you'll see there's the electric fuel pump and no rust through on the floor pan. So let's go over the, this is definitely a driver. Let's go over, we'll call them opportunities for improvement. So when I sandblasted the car years ago, probably like 5 years ago, what I didn't know is that you can etch the windows. So all of the windows have some, except for the front one, have some sandblasting foibles on them. Let's see that. New windows can be gotten from California Corvair, or used good windows, California Corvair. You know, you could replace plenty of things. You could easily spend $3,000 on this car. Fuzzies, so it's actually missing the fuzzies there, but this rubber here, this is new. It's not a Monza, it's a 700. It doesn't have the stainless steel trim, but I kind of like the rubber. Trunk's all solid. Has the original single master cylinder that could be upgraded to a dual master cylinder, just a little bit for safety. Front's serviceable. Latch works. Got the key still in there. You know, little things. There's plenty of defects, paint flaws, if you will. You know, you could probably find 50 if you wanted to. It's kind of a 10-footer. Some of my body work wasn't perfect. All could be corrected, but again, this is a driver. I gotta put the crank on there, but you'd see the windshield here looks very similar. So all of the side and back windshields could be. I mean, my son's been driving it that way for what, 3 years now. So, like I said, less than perfect. The speedometer does not work. The gas gauge does. Let's try this. The wipers do work. Okay, let's pull the lights. So, you know, you could get new. This came as Roman reds. This is the correct color, and then it had a red interior. That's the trim interior. If I were to redo this interior, which, you know, again, he's been using these seats, little patches here and there. Not terrible for a high school kid or a college kid, but you could get new. I would do it all in red. I would do the interior in the original red. That's why I painted all that red, and the steering wheel, I just painted that. So I would do that in red. Let's show the lights. Those are your back running lights. Reverse lights don't work. Could be made to work, but they don't. Front lights, that's on the brights, and then it has the dimmer switch, the foot switch down there, which takes it to just the two outside lights, not as bright. Usually just drive it with the brights on. The horn is there. The internals, to make the horn work, the internals have to be put in there, and the horns are there up front, the actual horns, but that system would have to be reinstated. The signal, there we go. Let's test signals. Okay, here's your back. I don't think the front lights and the signals work. No, just the back. So kind of the. Okay, now let's go to the right one. Okay. And brakes work as well. Brake lights work as well. Heater system is not hooked up. That would have to be gone through and made to work. Headliner doesn't hang in your head, but could use a new headliner. Like I said, it works for now. This light here the dome light could be made to work. So some kind of non-essential things that I consider them non-essential anyway that don't work. Those are the upgraded correct 62, 63. You might call them wire wheel covers, the 2-spinner wire wheel covers. In 64, they went to the 3-spinner, a little fancier. But those right there are the upgrade. I think they were like a $29 upgrade in 1962, and I like them, as opposed to just the pressed out wheel covers, which, you know, you could still get those, but I like the upgraded ones. Engine compression, I think, is around 120. I haven't done it in a while. Carburetors were rebuilt with new throttle shafts, you know, a couple years ago probably. I think we put a new bearing there. It has an electric fuel pump. This is just a bypass here. This was the mechanical fuel pump, but the electric fuel pump is down underneath. Generator still works fine. I guess the only thing that's not stock is this. I think this is the original engine in the car, but I remember why, but we put on a magnesium fan, a 64 magnesium fan, rather than the 63, probably because the 63 is heavier and has a greater tendency for the belt to come off. But the belt does not come off. You got electronic ignition, which is good. Don't have a spare, but we could get a spare. That's where the spare would go. Most people put it in the trunk. Painted this car. This was only a second car. I painted this car 5 years ago, and didn't look bad for 5 years. Getting a little bit of the evening dew on the top there. There's a little bit of little damage there, a little scuff. Metal got, but not terrible. If I were gonna improve anything as far as the paint goes in my initial body work, I would recreate that. I don't know if it's hard to see here, but there you can see it. That line right there. I would redo that, repaint that. I would just do better body work from there to correct that right there. And there's a little spot up here that wasn't great. Again, 10 feet, you can't hardly see it, but if you look close, and I would repaint that panel and that if I was going to improve this paint job. Let's look down here. The Corvair emblem is long since gone. Those are kind of hard to find, the 60s, because they break pretty easily, but I do know where one is if you wanted to get the Corvair emblem on there. Otherwise, let's see. Those are correct, those Monza emblems. And that front is correct. That's a correct 62. So as far as 62 goes, this is a pretty correct car. And I think that's a 64 seat there as far as the upholstery. And then that is like a 62 bottom and a 64 back and like a 64. So the inside could definitely be redone. Let's go ahead and start it. It's pretty warm. I mean, I drove it about 30 minutes ago. So to start, goes in neutral. Give it a couple of pumps to put some gas in the carbs. There you go. Starts up. Full tank of gas. I just filled it up. It was at half. I was testing what other things could be done. So the engine runs pretty good. You could re-ring it and put some if you wanted to get all the compression back, put some straighter cylinders on there and new rings. That's probably the original muffler. Probably put a new muffler on and be a little quieter. But in general, it runs pretty good. See if there's any other. I'm trying to give you sort of what you would see if you were to the radio. So it's got the radio mounting. You can get a radio, California Corvair, for like $50. Stick it in there and then put like a modern Bluetooth underneath, or you can get aftermarket modern radios that fit in there and look fairly pretty much like the original ones, but they're modern. They have Bluetooth and digital. I like to just have the original radio in there, and then put like a Bluetooth stereo guy, put like a little Bluetooth thing so you can play it off of your cell phone. And that's about it. Like I said, it's a nice driver. It's fun to drive. I'm gonna take it on kind of a long trip tomorrow, about 70 miles out to Hemet and back, just to make sure. My son goes to school in Riverside, college in Riverside, so he's driven it back and forth several times. And like I said, he's driven it for 3 years, but I guess he's ready for a more modern car, and so I'm selling it for him. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of what this car is about. I think probably the highlight of this car is that you can drive it as is, and it's a pretty car, and everyone gives you a thumbs up. Or it was sitting on the desert floor when I got it, like 6 years ago, since 1990. In fact, I have the original black plates, and the registration was 1990. And so because it was sitting out at 29 Palms or Palm Desert or something like that, it had, other than surface rust, it had 0 rust through anywhere. And so if you were to continue to upgrade this car, you're working with a good body and not one that, because I took it down to the metal, and there was some Bondo on it, but not a lot. It looks like maybe it got hit in the back, and then it got straightened at some point. But as far as rust goes, and it looks good now, but you can see a little crinkled metal there, which means, just some evidence that at some point you got some sort of accident in the back. But it was a very rust-free, very little Bondo car, and I took it down completely to the metal, so I got to see every square inch of the car. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what, if you come and look at it, you're not too surprised. One last thing here. It's a pretty dry car. I mean, Corvairs typically leak quite a bit. I don't even think that's oil right there. I think that's a little oil. But it's, in general, for a Corvair, it doesn't leak much. It leaks a little bit, but not much. Typically, because I know I've done the push-rod O-rings, most of the seals. I'm pretty sure I did a couple years ago, my son and I, when we re-ringed it, pretty sure we put a new crankshaft seal, front crankshaft seal, with the ready sleeve, which kind of helps it seal. So leaks a little bit, but not much. For a Corvair, it's pretty good. Okay, I keep thinking of things. I did put a new, for the steering, for the play in the steering, I put a new Pitman arm bushing, which takes some of the play out. The gearbox, it still has, without the wheel moving, it still moves a good amount, like a lot of old cars. So I think for this car, if you want to take, you can never get no play in the steering, but if you want to take more play out, you can get an aftermarket new steering gearbox. I think they're at California Corvair. I think they're about $300. It's about a 3-hour job to install it. It's fine. Been driving it that way for a long time. It's an old, it's an old car. You kind of expect some of that play in the steering, but all these things could be done to it, or you can just drive it as is. Okay, I keep thinking of things. So these tires are if you look back, they're the full-size 185/80 R13s. A lot of Corvairs will have the smallest is 155/80. Those are like the lowrider tires, and the 185/80s from the 155/80s is probably a difference of, you got to do the math, probably a difference of 2 inches higher that the car sits, and you can see how these full-size, or the closest you get to the full-size tires, really fill up the wheel wells, and it drives better too with the full-size tires. That's another thing I like. And they're all, I don't see any rot on any of the tires, and they have, I'd say, at least 60 or at least 50% of the tread left. And in this year, they didn't have the fatter white walls. They had the thinner white walls like that. So actually, A 62, it might have been a little bit fatter than this. I have to look, like maybe like a 1/4 inch thicker white wall. But this is pretty close. It didn't have like the 3-inch that you see on the 60s and even 61s. So this is pretty correct as far as the tires go. Well, it's getting dark here, but we'll do a little drive video here. The two-speed Power Glide 2-speed Power Glide transmission really is a nice, durable transmission. A lot of people like the 4-speed manual, but they're not nearly as robust as these Power Glides, and it does really well with the 2 speeds. I don't know if we can see very well, it's a lot of glare, but it's actually kind of fun to drive because they're unibody and they're fairly light cars. I think the whole entire transaxle and engine only weighs, I think, 455 pounds. Sorry, and compare that to a V8 or a V6 or an inline 6 with a differential, and it's probably a couple hundred pounds. So you don't need all the horsepower to kind of have a zippy little car. You're not going to win any drag races with this car, but it accelerates when you need it to, and it'll probably would do 80 or 90 miles per hour. I don't really go much faster than 60 or 65 in a Corvair on the freeway, because that's just me. But it's, if you come and drive it, you'll see that it's no speed demon, but it's not a dog. It does do okay. With the 102 horsepower, which is other than the turbo, was the biggest engine they offered in 62. It does okay. You can upgrade. You can upgrade to 110 horsepower, which they started in 65 or 64. I'm sorry. A lot of 110 horsepower engines out there. Those are the 2 carburetor, or you can get the higher performance 140 horsepower 4 carburetor version that they did from 65 to 69. And I think that's actually, in my opinion, that's too much power for a little Corvair like this, especially an early model. So I think I wouldn't do any more than 110 horsepower in this car, but I think the 102, especially if you improve the compression on it, just re-ringed it, put some reboard cylinders or something like that on it, it's perfectly adequate for the power and for what the car is, and the swing axle, suspension, and all that. They're not race cars. You don't want to drive them that way.